Hi, everybody. I'm Kailey.
I'm Katrina.
And this is Grace and Chaos.
Welcome back to episode 3. We were just chatting right before we started about not being robots. So let's check in. How's it going? How was your week?
It's going. It has been a wild week in the Robinson household. So I don't know if I've said this, but we were having some issues with our daughter's school, and they do go to a Christian private school. And unfortunately, we find out that they are in fact not Christian. So guys, I am now a homeschool teacher as of tomorrow morning. Pray for me. So that's been this week. We have been doing a lot of prayer and a lot of just prayer.
Unfortunately, that sounds like a stand-up joke or something. I sent my daughter to Christian school all to find out they were not Christian.
It kind of feels
this is real
like
life.
a stand-up joke. Okay, context. I guess maybe I should give context here. So we go to this school. It is a fantastic school. They teach Abeka curriculum, which is the curriculum I used when I was in a Christian school. Love it. Was so happy. Met all the teachers. Didn't meet the owners when we met and did like the interview process. And, big mistake. I should have. Actually, honestly, this is not my fault. This is them. This is not me. But I remember at one point they did a prayer during the school year so far. And I looked at my husband and I said, I don't think we're praying to the same God. And he was like, I don't either. So we prayed and just asked for God to give us revelation and just.
And here we are.
Yes. And so here we are. And, you can worship whatever God you want. That's your thing to face. But my money will not go towards that school because God will not be mocked. That is one thing. And so we made the bold decision. Because listen, anything you take from this, my husband and I, once we found out, we literally put on our notice and said, we're done. This is our last week. And I'm a firm believer that like delayed obedience is still disobedience. So I said, oh crap, I'm really going to have to teach. So we had to find curriculum this week. We had to figure out childcare because I'm a coach. So I have to be at a school early in the morning. I have to be at school again in the afternoon. So this was not a convenient thing. But I said, Lord, I'm going to trust you. I know God is in the midst of it. That is one thing that I'm like, God, if you told us to do this, you're going to take care of it all. So I have had this peace, but it is still exhausting. And I found myself just mentally drained this week of just saying, God, I can't carry this load. I need you to carry it. But my girls are in high spirits. They're like, Mommy, you're my teacher now. I said, sure. I sure am. Love that for me.
Mom.
Yeah. And listen, I know I'm going to do great. I'm so excited for it, but it is a really fast, life came at you fast. So that was that. So how's your week, Trina?
I'm excited about that journey for you. Whatever that looks
Are we?
like. Can't wait to see it. I'm not part of it, so I just get to watch. I'll pray. All right.
Yeah, I need prayers. Wait, you don't just get to sit idle. I need you praying.
I will be praying. But okay, how's our house going? Well, I am just getting over the flu. Our house has been out 4 out of 6 of us this week with the flu. So that's been rough.
Who's been too healthy?
Jax and Henry.
God bless the men.
God bless them.
Levi. Wait, never mind. Just God
Poor
bless
Levi.
those two.
Levi started on Monday. He was like sleeping all during class. And so I picked him up a little bit early, and then it hit Nova by Wednesday, me by Wednesday night, and then Mina on Friday. And she's actually the one in the thick of it right now. So I'm hoping it stops there. But poor Mina and Levi, or Nova and Levi, my own kids.
There's a lot of kids.
There will be a quiz at the end of this. By our homeschool teacher. Okay, I can't help myself. But they have had it the first, and like they've gotten better. They definitely feel a lot better, but they still just look miserable. And I'm like, come on, guys, you need to go to school by Tuesday.
I need you to go to school.
Absolutely,
Not because if you tuned into last episode because we have a to-do list, but because we have our sanity that needs to be kept.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
God agrees. I hope.
He sees my heart. Struggling heart.
But yeah, so that's how we've been. I do feel a lot better. I had like the worst part about this flu is I had the worst headache, and I feel like that makes me like not be able to function. But today I woke up with energy, no headache, and
God is good.
We're back.
Back and we're better.
Absolutely ready to talk about marriage.
I am ready to talk about marriage.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was like, did you have any expectations before meeting Lex? Like, bring it back. You could go as early as you want. You could be like, when you're a kid, you remember this expectation, or when you became a teenager. But what expectation did you have about marriage? Did you have an expectation of who or like the type of person you were going to marry? I'm just curious.
That is such a good question. So oh my gosh. This is going to get way too deep so fast.
We love it.
I did not have a good example of marriage at all in the home. Like, at all. When they would say a husband's supposed to die for his wife, lay down his life, like, not in my home. That would never have happened. And my mom wouldn't have laid down her life for him either. They did not like each other at all. And they stayed together for 20 some odd years. Stupidest thing ever. But I really don't think I ever wanted to get married. Actually, I know I didn't want to, because I was like, if this is what that is, heck no, I'm not interested in that. So I think because Lex is my only real boyfriend, my only first, like, he's the first boy that called me his girlfriend. It was Alexis. And I went home after the first night of meeting him, and I had fallen in love with him on the first night, and told my roommate, I'm going to marry Alexis Robinson. And if I'm not going to marry him, I'm going to marry one of his brothers. And I remember her looking at me like I was an absolute kook, which is fair. And then 3 years later, she was at our wedding and was like, you're going to marry Alexis Robinson. Like, it was a whole thing. So I don't think I think the only expectation was that we would yell a lot. Like, that was genuinely, like, that's what marriage looked like, and that this so trashy of us, but that the cops would be at our house all the time, like, because that's really how I grew up. My mom and dad would get into a fight, police would come. I really thought marriage was just purely toxic. So I had zero high expectations, and my only expectation was that there was a lot of fighting. And even in church growing up, when they would talk about marriage, I would be just annoyed because my dad would be sitting next to me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my mom would never go to church because she couldn't stand my dad. And that would really frustrate me too if my husband was in church oohing and awing. Well, he wasn't practicing what he's oohing and awing over. And it really didn't help that she didn't go to church because she needed Jesus. But I just knew, I was like, ugh, this is not it. And I was not the girl that pictured my wedding. I remember even when you were planning my wedding, remember the questions you would ask me, and you're like, what is your dream? I'm like, my dream? What is my dream? My dream is to stay married. And at this point, I think the only reason we were just talking about this is Lex said last night at dinner with one of our friends, if it wasn't for us having Kailey, we would not be married today. Like, she was the glue that kept us together, that we were like, we're fighting for this because we have a child and she deserves us to figure it out. But we had no positive thought process on marriage together. But yeah, my expectations were really low, if not non-existent.
I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Not everybody grew up seeing two parents in love, long-term marriage, you know, and more in today's culture, is that the case, right? You know, it's very culturally known that divorce is high, or, you know, that families are looking different. And so I think that's one, I commend you for being real and opening up, but also I think that so many others can see their story in yours as well.
Yeah.
For me, we're going to go on contrast.
Literally. Guys, you're going to see this so much. And I honestly think it's what makes our friendship so genuinely special is we could not be more opposite in so many areas of our life.
Yeah.
But somehow, like, it really just works. The Lord is faithful in that.
He really is. So I grew up, my parents, they just celebrated 35
Happy anniversary,
years.
Rich and Barb.
So I just got to watch their marriage, and like any marriage, it wasn't perfect, but in my eyes, especially as a kid, it was like they set such a good example. And my dad is the most romantic man I've ever met.
Gosh,
like my mom jokes that she's more like the guy in the relationship, just in the way.
For sure.
My dad, that's where I get making everything special. And my mom does too. I don't want to discount her, but my dad goes above and beyond with little things. He'll remember their dating anniversary, of course their wedding anniversary, but makes birthdays a big deal, all the things. So I definitely got to watch how much and what a loving husband does for his wife. And he set that standard and expectation so high that I knew I wasn't going to marry a man short of that. If anything, it was, you got a lot to live up to.
Seriously.
And even Henry, we've been together long enough that we're definitely in our own relationship. But in the beginning, he saw how important my dad was in my life and how good of a man he was. And I think he would admit that he felt some pressure too. Because
for sure.
This guy does it all.
Guys, I remember Rich texting Katrina. It was like almost every day. Good morning, honey. And I
still does.
I can't, that is something I just, in my heart, I got into a fight with my dad a couple years ago, and I actually said, this is terrible. I actually said, you don't ever text me. And Katrina's dad texts her every day. And my dad's like the leave and cleave kind of dad, where he's like, oh, you got a new family, go for it. And I'm like, you could still love me.
No. Just send me a text, please.
Yes. So, yeah, Rich is, as a husband and a father, incredible.
That was, so I saw my parents together, and then, so growing up, I always thought I was going to get married because that was what I saw, and I would look at my mom's wedding album and see her beautiful dress, and they got married 1990, so she had like big puffy sleeves, like the stereotypical wedding dress that you see on a cake topper.
Her bangs were this big. Yeah.
Everything. And it was beautiful, and it was everything. And they got married in the cathedral. So it was like this beautiful church. And it was just the dream that I grew up seeing and wanting. And so I always wanted a wedding, and then I always wanted a big wedding because that's what I saw flipping through. And then I got into the wedding industry. It just fine-tuned all the things that I did want. And it's funny because today, we're about to celebrate 8 years, 8 years this year. And I definitely don't regret it. I'm so grateful to have all those memories to look back on. But I did do it up because that's how I had always wanted to do it. And I got big goals, and then I'm going to get them. So that's kind of how that all happened. And then bring it back to the other question of expectation of who I thought I was going to marry. I mean, I think I talked a lot about my dad in the beginning. So that was the example I had. So I knew that that's what I was kind of the standard, at least, of how he treated somebody. But what is funny is I did marry someone pretty darn similar to my dad. Henry is very similar in the way that I grew up. My dad coached high school football. Henry coaches college football. Great man. Henry's a great man. And I mean, I could go on, but it's just like they do have a lot of similarities.
For sure.
But yeah, so I feel like I was honestly surprised how much I found somebody that fit my own expectations.
Which is crazy. And you found him in college at that, which you would not. The fact that you guys found each other in college is wild because he is a very good man, and he's always been a very good man and a well-respected man. That's one thing that of Henry, you can't find anybody that will speak about Henry as though like he's done something wrong. You know, like everyone makes mistakes, but Henry is one of those people that if he makes a mistake, it's not going to be a public mistake. He's not reckless. He's not arrogant. You can't find somebody at our college that's going to be able to speak ill on Henry. You just can't, which speaks volumes.
Well, I love that. Thank you for saying that. I mean, I agree, of course. So that's why I married him. But it's always nice to hear that too. That like, you know, because of course I have my rose tinted glasses. Like I'm in love with him. So I believe all those things. But to hear it from somebody else is always such an honor, a thank you.
Yeah. As far as like Alexis, there were certain things that he did that just to me, I remember telling him we had like a breakup at some point, got back together. And I remember when I broke up with him, I said, thank you for showing me that a man can treat a woman with love. And we obviously ended up getting back together. So it was very dramatic at the time. But that was one thing about him that shocked me is I didn't lift. I still don't. I actually had this conversation the other day. I don't have to lift a finger. If I say I'm thirsty, he's like, oh, let me grab your water. If I say I'm hungry, oh, what do you want to eat? If I am at school and forgot my bag to get into the office, he's like, oh, I'll bring it to you right now. No big deal. I have to tell him sometimes like, no, I need you to prioritize your job over me right now. I will be okay. I promise. But he just has this like need to protect, to serve. And he's always had that. That was always how he was, where he opened the door for me. Even though he was this little hoodlum in college and like crazy boy, he still treated me better than anybody had ever treated me. So I guess those are the things that made me fall for him, you know, that made me say, oh, I really want to be with this man. Now there was other crap we had to work out, obviously, because he was not saved. Let me add, this man did not have a relationship with Jesus. We say that he was an Instagram bio Christian. He literally he had, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, tattooed on his arm. But I said, do you know what book in the Bible that is? He said, like
the Bible? No,
yeah, no, actually he didn't own a Bible, which we resolved very quickly. But it was after he got saved and kind of came to Jesus that I was like, okay, I think I can actually marry this man. I think that like we can work on this. And then when he got saved, that's when I said, okay, I'm like, I for sure would marry him right now. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, you answered my next question, which was, did you have that moment where you knew you were going to marry him?
Yeah. But I remember him getting baptized in a lake. I think that there's a lot of intimacy in leading your partner to Christ because I was saved, obviously. There was like a really intimate thing about the fact that now we had this relationship of you're my boyfriend, but now I'm also like teaching you about Jesus and teaching you about my one true love, which is God, which just, there was so much intimacy in that.
That's beautiful. I mean, Lex, he always has had such a big heart. I feel like that was the number one thing when I met him. Just, you see that, like you said, he'll get you the water. He'll do the things just because like he wears his heart on his sleeve
for sure.
In that sense of caring for people and loving them and letting them know. And I admire that about him. So for Henry and me, we actually met at Sex Date. I think we've covered that. But we met when I was a freshman. He was a junior in like an economics class. And we both, I think it was like that unspoken, like, oh, I think you're cute. And then a year later, we ended up getting together. And once we got together, it was funny because we were friends and we'd like on and off talk. And then a year later is when we actually got together. So when we did get together, it was like no turning back and we knew that we'd probably be together forever quickly. We got together in like September, I want to say, of 2013. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then by like February, he got me a promise ring. So
Wait.
We were very much in it.
Hold on.
Yeah,
How did
like,
I not know this? What time frame?
because we tried not making, like, it wasn't like I made it a huge deal. I mean, I posted the little infinity band. Funny story about that, though, is I had it all the way up until we got engaged. And then when we got engaged, we took photos over these like big rocks, and I dropped the promise ring. Like, it was something I wanted to keep because it was sentimental, but it also, like, at the time, I remember being like, who cares? I got the diamond now. Like, you know, and then it's also, we did find meaning in the fact that, like, it's literally there.
Yeah.
Still, you know, like, it dropped in there. It's a special place for us. And that little promise turned into an engagement, and the promise is there forever. So
I love the optimism in that.
meaningful.
Yep. I love that.
Always. But then fast forward to when I knew, actually, this is a funny story and really embodies us perfectly. So we got together, he was playing, I was cheering. And at this point, I had no kids, so I would take literally 5 hours doing my hair and makeup to just look pretty for a football game. And so I'm sitting there doing my eyeshadow. He's getting ready to leave because our schedules are different pregame. And I walk up to him, literally fishing for a compliment. And I close my eyes. I'm like, do you like my eyeshadow? And instead of, you know, the typical, I was waiting for like, oh yeah, it looks great. He looks at me. He looks at both eyes, like back and forth so meticulously. And he goes, that one could be a little darker. Originally, I was like a little offended because I really wanted just like, oh, you look great. But really, internally, I was like, wow, I've met my match. And I appreciate the honesty and somebody who's just always trying to make me better. So
I love that about him. So he's actually currently watching our last week's podcast before we release it tomorrow to give me fine tuning, because I don't text Katrina for criticism. I text Henry. Because I remember my very first interaction with them as a couple is when I was going out with Katrina one night, and I'm dressed up and Katrina says, ask Henry. And I was so uncomfortable, but I stand in front of him. I'm feeling it in my chest right now.
The nervousness of that moment. Well, I think it's funny that I would say that, but it's just because if you know Henry, he is the most honest person ever.
But so I stand in front of him and he takes a solid, I'm not going to be dramatic, scan. So gives me a 3-1000. And he's like, yeah, you look good. And then he says something about my purse, because I had a purse on, and Katrina was like, oh no, she's going to wear a white one instead. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I felt in that moment, I was like, I can trust him.
Yes, he will tell you how it is.
But he's not mean. He's very honest.
No.
Yep.
But really, it was also the moment, you know, that just continues to transcend into our marriage today of iron sharpening iron. Because he is that person for me, and I am that person for him, that we both have insanely high standards and expectations for life and for ourselves and for our kids and for our family and for our careers and for our faith and for everything that has to do with us.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to have a partner that is that equal / better, you know, that pushes you to be better. And that eyeshadow moment for me was that epiphany of like, wow, this guy's really gonna be there and tell me, you know, you could be better here. Like, your eyeshadow looks great. Like, he skipped that part, all right? But it was like, this is where it could be better. And I think that we both do that for each other, and that's the qualities that we both really wanted out of a partner. So.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Trina, what is your love language? What is Henry's love language? And like, what are the differences, obviously? And how do those affect your relationship today and every day?
I would say mine are words of affirmation and acts of service. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that's like, well, all of them. Give me a gift. But the first two would definitely be words of affirmation, acts of service. Show me
Yeah.
tell me.
Yes. That's
Fine.
fair.
And then his is physical touch. Well, I know it's physical touch, but I think he'd be words of affirmation. I think those would be the two up there for him too.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it actually took me a long time to realize how, you have your own, but then they want to be loved under their own. I'm totally butchering this.
It's okay. I'll explain it. So you often love the way that you like to receive love, and their reception of love is different. So it's going to be tricky. You have to love a way that you don't like to be loved necessarily.
Totally. Because in the beginning, when we so much learning.
It's work. Is that what
exactly
this is?
What it
Marriage is work? Wow.
But under the guise of, honoring your husband and all those sorts of things, it's like you want to please your partner how they want to be pleased, vice versa. But there is this level of service, like physical touch. For me, that's not the way that I feel the most loved, right? Like maybe it's because I'm touched out by the end of the night from my children, but I mean,
it's probably got a lot to do with it.
It has a lot to do with it. But it's also understanding that this is a moment where you can say, regardless of my feelings, this is something that's important to him. And because I love him so much, honor, respect, all the things, I need to figure out how to meet him where he needs to be met. And it's a lot of selflessness,
It's so funny you say that, because it is. I had a friend tell me, and listen, we're adults, so we can talk about sex. His love language is physical touch, because a lot of men are physical touch and words of affirmation. Tell me I'm sexy and touch me. That's just like
and
our
a lot
joke.
of moms are like,
yeah, honestly, because that's
let me
dead.
lay down.
That is dead last on mine. Like it could. I think that there's probably another a sixth language that comes before it. My friend told me, she's like, sometimes get over yourself and just do it. It feels good when you're doing it. It's just in the beginning, you just got to get in the headspace and just make it happen. And I'm like, all right, I can take that. Like I can get there in my mind. But it was great advice. But yes, physical touch.
No, completely. But I have communicated to him that I'm somebody, hey, I know this is something you want, but for me to get in the right headspace, like it's like you talking last episode about the dishes being done, right? Like you can't praise before this. Like there are certain things that I need help with in the house or the kids or the X, Y, the Z. And this is kind of my acts of service. Like if you can do that for me, then I am in a much more relaxed, ready headspace.
Yes. I think
to
that
love
that's
you
justified.
the way you want to be loved, and it's like,
yes.
But again, it's funny. It's those communication is so much of like common sense, logical, right?
Yeah.
But we forget all the time. We just want and we assume our partner is going to read our mind or remember that it's so important to us. And yeah, maybe we don't always forget the other, your husband's love language, but if it's physical touch, sometimes we want to forget. So it's like,
That'd be a tomorrow issue.
I thought we were maybe
rain
tomorrow.
check.
And he's like, rain check for 2 weeks? I was kidding. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I want to meet you where you're at. And I want to provide for you. I also need to be provided for as well. And like, that's really, like, to me, that's the essence of marriage and partnership.
For sure.
Figuring out how to meet each other's needs, each other's wants, be there for one another, because I do want, like, I love him. I want to make him happy. He loves me. He wants to make me happy. Like, it's all out of the want. It's not because we need the other person to make us happy, but it's like when you love somebody, you want to serve.
My love languages are gifts and acts of service, but kind of intertwined simultaneously, because I view an act of service as a gift and a gift as an act of service, kind of. I have a hard time differentiating. But what it is behind, it's the intentionality behind it. is where I feel loved. So like basically I did add a sixth love language, and it's just intentionality. For me, if somebody, mostly my husband, shows me that they really thought about this and this was something that they knew I would love, and they listened to something that I said. My friend took me to get my toes done. My nose done.
Looks great.
No, I had jokingly said that I haven't gone to a nail salon in forever because I do them myself, but I just don't want to sit on the floor and do them myself. So they haven't gotten done this year. She took me to get my goodness gracious. So she takes me to get my toes done the other day and insisted on paying. And it was a whole thing. And I was like, that is so sweet. She says, I know you didn't want to sit on the floor. And I was like, it wasn't just that you wanted to get your toes done. You thought about it. And that to me was so sweet. And
that was the gift. Yeah.
Yes. And
like,
so
of course,
it was an act of service simultaneously, but it was also a gift, and it was intentionalities. But anyways, Alexis is physical touch and words of affirmation. So I'm the same way as you, where I just am like, oh, I have to work to show you the love. Like, I really do love you with everything I have, but I have to die to self all the time.
It makes me think though too, along with love languages, serving your partner, how do you prioritize your relationship with the busyness of life? You know what I mean? Like, because there are the lazy Sundays, which are great. Like, we forgot about quality time. Love me some quality time. Just sitting together. Just like my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Also, a foot rub. To me, that's quality time. But
yes. That's kind of all of them. You're physically touching me. You're going to talk to me while we're doing it. So I'm assuming that's an act of service, quality time, physical touch. It's a gift. Foot rubs could quite literally make the divorce rate go from 50% in America. If y'all just got more foot rubs and gave more foot rubs, more babies would happen, because a foot rub leads to a back rub, and a back rub leads to another baby.
Yeah, see, that's the only thing is, why is it always like a trade? Can't I just get a foot rub?
No, Alexis is great. He'll literally, because especially I'm coaching, so my feet do hurt. I am literally on my feet so much lately. And I'll fall asleep, and he'll be rubbing my feet while I fall asleep. And I'll wake up like 10 minutes later, and he's still rubbing. Oh, good man. Such a good man.
He's such a good man. It's not always ends in a trade, but the trade is always offered.
It's on the table.
Forgotten to be like, okay, well.
It is always on the table.
Yes.
But how do we prioritize?
Yes, because apart from the times where you are available to even get a foot rub, then there's like, we got kids, they got sports, you both work, all the things, life.
So I don't know that we're great at this. I think that's an area that we could do so much better in. And I have nothing to add other than like, we meet each other at home a lot. Like, we do have an intentional dinner, just the two of us. We chat, we talk. We just make sure we make time for each other at home. But yeah, I don't think I'm great in that area. We just make sure we don't miss each other in communication. But what advice do you have? Because I don't know that you're going on dates, but your cup's getting full somehow.
Yeah, there's no dates happening around here.
We are so bad. Like, we really need to be better about this. We've got to figure it out.
Yeah, one day. No, I agree.
This is real life. I would love to tell you all, our listeners, that we've got it all figured out, and we're the people that are going to say date nights once a week, but you're not getting that here. I think it'd be valuable. I don't think it would hurt, but it's not happening.
So one thing I think we're decent at, okay, I keep doing that. I'm such a down player. Something I think we're good
You're fantastic at it. I don't even know what it is, but you're probably great at it.
Thanks. Hype me up.
Yes.
First of all, physical touch, all those sorts of things, we call it connecting, because that's what it is. It is about connection and having that moment together. But I love talking. Like, to me, that is also connection. And so it's like, to me, it's those connection points, like you were saying. If life's crazy and you go a couple days without connecting, like in whatever capacity that means or the person needs, right? Like for Henry, that might be more physical. And for me, that means like, I need to be able to talk to you. I just want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And so luckily we both wake up super duper early. So like even in season, or even non-season, there was times where we're both up and he has like 10 minutes, or maybe he doesn't have 10 minutes, but he gives me 10 minutes. And I'm like on the treadmill and we are talking and talking and talking and just catching up on like something going on or something I have forgotten to tell him or all the things. And to me, that like, that's connection, or making the physical touch a priority for connection because that's important to him. And it's like, even when it's a busy time, like we're very intentional on getting our like connection points, if that makes sense. And like you were saying, marriage is your first ministry, and it should be, because you know you got to be a good wife before you can be
anything.
It all goes together, you know. That alone, though, that respect that we have for the connection point for ourselves, but even we do have so much respect for each other that we are both owning our roles in our relationship, and that's the rules that we set out from the moment we got married.
I have a question. What would be the best marriage advice that you've ever gotten or feel like you've given to somebody else?
Yeah, well, the first one I can answer easily because Henry and I refer to this still today. When we got married, my Uncle Ron was the officiant. And he met with us before the ceremony, well, like weeks before the wedding day, to talk about how he wanted to do it, how we wanted to do it. And since we had never gotten married, we're like, we're just going to trust you on this.
Yeah.
And he had done it before. And so we did trust him. And then we trusted him outside of that as well. But he said something to us that we still recite to this day. And it was that she's going to come with her normal and he is going to come with his normal. And you're going to put those normals together, and then you guys are going to create a new normal. Like, this marriage is going to be parts of his past, parts of her past, you know, parts of his family, parts of her family. And then you're going to put it together, and you're going to create your own family, and you're going to create your own marriage, and you're going to make decisions that are, you know, what are we going to move forward, right, from our past? So the things that we love, what do we want to do differently, and all those sorts of things. And we talk about that all the time because so much of your past does shape who you are, and it's important. But you also get to decide what now. Where do you want to go? What are your goals? What do you guys want to do together? What do you want your family to look like? What do you want the traditions to be? And so that's something that we always remind each other of, because family is extremely important to both of us. Like, that was one of the big reasons we got together in the beginning, because his family was so important to him, and my family has always been so important to me. And seeing how much we both individually valued our families. We're like, this is something we want in a partner. This is something we know who's going to value their future family, all those sorts of things. And so when he said that, like, we still talk about it today of like, remember, this is a new normal. This is where we do get to do things differently, or also we can take things that we loved and continue them on, and all those sorts of things. But it's so true. And it just gives me so much peace knowing that this, you know, your union, your marriage is yours to decide how you want to move forward and how you want that to look and be. And like for you, right, I even think about that because it's like you didn't have the example, so you guys, and neither of you did. So you two get to really decide that new normal of what do I want this to look like.
And sometimes it's messy. That's one of the things that like you have to just realize, is that when you are creating those new normals, when you are figuring out what you want it to look like, you're going to do it wrong first before you're like, ooh, I didn't like that one. Like we have that where we just try to figure out what are new traditions, because we don't come from a family with traditions at all. Like, and those are really important, I think, to kids. So I just think it looks messy when you're figuring it out and figuring out who likes what and give and take and push and pull. And I love
and
that
oftentimes
advice.
traditions start without even intention. Like a lot of times it's just like you stumble upon a tradition that your family, all of us, you realize your kids love it so much. Like just playing a board game on Christmas Eve. I don't know, you know, something random.
Us putting up our Christmas tree on October 15th. I know everyone thinks it's the most wild thing in the world, but I was depressed one year in October and we walked by Walmart, had Christmas stuff up already, and my husband saw the joy in my eyeballs and was like, wow, I haven't seen you smile like that in quite literally a couple of weeks. Do you want to put up our Christmas tree? And I was like, it's not even November. And he's like, do you want to put up your Christmas tree? If it was November today, would you? I was like, absolutely. And he's like, let's buy a tree and let's buy some ornaments. And we literally have put it up on October 15th every year for the past 5 years now. Because that's just the tradition. That's just what we do. And we put it in front of a window and everyone can look at us like we're kooks. And that's okay.
Do you have marriage advice that has stuck out to you that you were given?
So, I mean, yes, obviously we've been to therapy. So
something stuck, I hope.
Yep, it did. Actually, honestly, there's like two pieces. One of them was for my therapist, and she said, do not create a story. And it applies to everything in life. But if there are not definitive facts that are tangible, that are real, that you can prove, and not just like a puzzle piece that you're jamming together to make it work, but if you can't prove that something is factual, it is a story that you are creating, which makes it completely fictional. And you can't base your emotions off of your fictional story that you created. And I have taken that everywhere in life, but in my marriage, all the time, I have to be like, okay, am I assuming intent right now? Am I assuming that he intentionally forwarded my call because he knew I was going to be upset about the fact that he didn't switch the laundry over and now it's sour and the girl's uniform is dirty? You know what I mean? Like, you go through this whole thing and it's like, in reality, maybe he has his phone on Do Not Disturb. You know, like you have to just, you can't create a story. And then the next piece of advice that I got, which actually I don't even know that I don't know whoever said it, but at some point I heard it, is that, and I'm going to ruffle some feathers here, but divorce is not an option. That like divorce isn't a choice. It's a covenant, and covenants are holy and you don't break it. And that divorces don't make anything easier, and you might as well fight for the marriage and work through it and grow yourself through what you're going through, rather than quitting and taking the crap that, even if you weren't to blame for the divorce, into the next relationship that you're in. It's going to be there. We all have baggage. We all have our stuff. But fight for what you have today, because if you don't like them today, I promise you, God can make you like them 6 months from now. And you just fight and you live for the hope. So choose hope and not divorce, kind of was the other piece of advice.
Yeah. Early on when we got married, we made sure that, hey, now that we're married, any argument, like, you are not allowed to use the word divorce. Mm-hmm. Like, that to us is like a bad word. Mm-hmm.
And like worse than a bad word. It's a boundary, like a hard boundary.
It's just, that's not something, like, we can argue, we can fight it out till 2-3 a.m. if we got to, or, you know, if it's going to take a couple days, who knows, you know, whatever the case may be.
We're working through it.
I don't take a few days. I have to get things over and done with. Like, if we disagree, we are coming to a common place. All right. Mm-hmm. But it was like, you know, if you do get in those big arguments or fights, it's like, you're not allowed to say that thought. Even like, that was for us something that we decided early on, like, that for us, divorce is not an option, so we're not even going to say that word. Like, that's not something you're going to throw around in a fight because you're angry or you don't like what I did or whatever the case may be. That is like, the ultimate off the table word, because then you're just playing with fire.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that even as I say that, I can feel you, whoever you are. Oh my gosh, they must not have a hard marriage. They must not know how hard it is. And I will be first to be so vulnerable and say, I mean, Katrina chuckles now, like, I have not had an easy marriage. Our marriage up until this last year, I mean, we've been married for 7 years, and we have had to work to get to where we're at. No, I am so head over heels in love with my husband. But I can't say that there haven't been seasons that I'm like, I want to give up. I don't want to do this. And it's been the firm belief and the living for the hope. I think praying and just saying, God, I have hope for what you're going to do in my husband. I have hope for what you're going to fix in me. I have hope. And I can't say that every day I woke up and was like joyful about the hope, but I will say that it's been hard and we've still stuck through it. There is probably, I mean, we're only on episode 3, but I'll be completely raw and transparent. There's nothing we haven't been through in our marriage. We have been through it all. We've lost homes. We've lost cars. There's been, I mean, when we were dating, there were other women before he was saved. Like, we've been through a lot. We've built a business, lost a business. We've moved across the country 3 times. We've had a hard marriage. We've been through it. And I can say, I'm going to say from the other side, I know that we're going to go through it again, and there's going to be other trials and there's going to be other moments. But from the other side of, like, my husband and I have never been in as good of a season as we are now. My husband is on fire for the Lord and chooses the Lord every single day and leads us and budgets our money and is honest and transparent. But there's been other things that have been desperately wrong. And God has just fixed things. And the hope for what I live for, I'm living in now, I guess, is where I'm going with all of this. Is
I love that. And for someone who has been there next to you through every single thing, every little bump, big bump,
massive bump,
massive bumps. It's just so good to hear that. I mean, good is such an understatement to say, but you know, God is amazing. And I know that you two gave it to him. That's the only, like, especially this last go around, it was like, God, do your thing.
Yeah.
This is yours. And we're going to trust and do our part, of course.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to watch and amazing to see, because it would have, in many ways, I think it could be easier to just,
it could have been way easier.
It would have been a lot easier to do it that way.
To just bail and choose not to fight anymore.
But to see it be worth it is so much more beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and it just grows your love deeper together, your trust, all the things you want in a marriage. It just gets wider and deeper.
Yeah.
And so it's all you can ask for. If you're going to go through it, you might as well make it worth it.
I think, like, really, at the end of the day, Jesus is the ultimate forgiver of our sins. And if we're supposed to forgive others of the unthinkable, I mean, Jesus was betrayed, Jesus was denied, and he turned around and, like, I love you still. And so I always say divorce is hard, marriage is hard, forgiving is harder. And which one brings you closer to Jesus? I choose that, even if it's the hardest path. Because we all want to be Christ-like. And he forgave everybody for everything and sacrificed everything for everyone.
Now, off that beautiful Jesus segment, I, of course, have a beautiful IG quote.
I love it.
I love my IG quotes.
Bring it on.
I saw this knowing that we were going to talk about marriage. I was like, oh, I love that. So I had to just share it. It says, and they lived happily ever after. And then lived happily ever after is crossed out. And so it says, really. And they worked really, really hard. They pushed each other's boundaries, triggered old wounds, and tried to heal them side by side. They weathered the lowest of lows and soared through the highest of highs. Through the chaos and magic, they realized they have to choose each other time and time again in small ways every day.
Ooh, I
And
saw
was
that
like,
today, but somehow you reading that to me, our algorithms are obviously feeding us the same thing. But you reading it, I got goosebumps because I'm just like, that is it.
It just spoke to me. And to me, it's a very cliche answer of like giving marriage advice, but it's just the communication and learning how to communicate effectively. And even so much so realizing when you're not communicating effectively, like we have those moments too, where I'm like, we're just missing each other. Like, I mean, I love it when we're on the same page, same line, but like we are on two different chapters right now. And it's just like, this is a discussion that we just can't even have right now because it's not being constructive. And that's pretty much where we get, but we have always communicated. Our distance helped us, I feel like, communicate even more and better. We got together when I was 19 and now I'm 30. So like 11 years, like all of my 20s, you change so much in your 20s. And if you are planning on marrying and staying with your partner for the rest of your life, like you are going to change.
Oh my gosh.
Like you're supposed to evolve. Like I don't want to be the same person I was a year ago. And I hope to be different a year from now.
For sure.
So that's why to me, communication is so important because you can't change and leave your partner in the dust. You can't be making all these shifts and changes and growing and bettering yourself and not communicating with your partner that this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. I think that that's something that we've always at least been decent at, of like, I can compliment us better than that. We've been really good at is that we're like such good communicators of telling each other where we're at.
For Alexis and I, that has been one of the things that we aren't great at is communication. And it has been the hardest thing in the world. And once you feel like you're missing each other, finding your way back after it is like, wait, I don't even think you knew what I thought I knew you knew that I knew, and I don't even, that did not
because you're working off assumptions, right?
Yes. And so it took us a very long time to realize that our communication was trash. Purely. And it's funny because we went through premarital counseling and they make us take a like 150 question test. And I remember the people that married us, it was our spiritual mentors at the time, they got the results back and they sat us down and they said, okay, let's go through the results. And we got to the last page and it had compatibility and triggers and it had all of these things. And they said, you guys are going to have an extremely hard time in marriage. We know you choose each other, but I need you to know that it's not going to be easy because all of the things listed. They said, Alexis, your trauma triggers her trauma. Your money blueprint was completely different than mine. Alexis's family, his dad was very lucrative in ways that have now ended him in bad places. So they had a never ending stream of just money that would come in. So they had the thought process of spend it, it'll come, spend it, it'll come. So they would get the toys, they would do but then you would be rags to riches a lot. So you'd be wealthy for this season and then broke the next season. And my family, my mom, even though she could afford things and shouldn't have been on government assistance, was on government assistance and would have the Louis Vuitton bag while using the EBT. My mom hid money, and then whenever one of us kids was upset, she'd take us binge shopping. So we just had every single thing on this document, the tests that we took, said that we were going to struggle. My communication style was completely opposite of Alexis. Alexis had the belief that like if something bad was going on, you don't tell the woman. A man just keeps his mouth shut. He doesn't have to disclose anything. Even if it was really bad and going to affect her, he would just keep it all in. Whereas I'm under the belief, as one should, that you tell your wife everything and you should, like, it was just, we were polar opposites, but madly in love. And so this test said that we were going to struggle. And it's funny because we found the test when we were moving, and I looked at it, and this was when we were in the thick of really struggling, and I just started crying and was like, oh, how little did I know. I think we had this like, well, it couldn't be worse than our parents' thought process. And then when you're living in it, it was really hard. And so I will say, one thing I will say is that Alexis and I have been good about our kids not being affected by our crap. We are very conscious of making sure that we didn't make our stuff affect our children, because that was one thing we agreed on, is we are not screwing these little people up. And so I say all that to say is that even though last week we were talking about our motherhood as our ministry, I think even before that would be a disservice to not say that your marriage is your first ministry. And if that one's out of whack, you can't do the motherhood part to your best.
I agree. I bet that test, did you just like, now seeing the answers, you could like name the things that have happened?
1,000%.
Because
like, I mean, if we're going to be very real and honest, my husband struggled with honesty. Like, he would not tell me for years the things that were going on in our house, in our life. I would be completely left in the dark. And because I was scared to deal with it, I would just stick my head in the mud for years and just pretend it wasn't real and act like it wasn't happening. And a little bit of me was just like hopeful that it would have been the last time and it's not going to happen again. Let's just say it all. I'm just going to say it, and this is going to suck. But no, it's not going to suck. It'll be fine, because somebody else, praise God, if you're listening to this and you're struggling in marriage, I hope this gives you hope, because I am more in love with my husband now than I ever was. And he is a completely different man than the man that I'm talking about in this story. Like, anybody can say it. Anybody that knows him a year ago versus now is like, you are a different human being. So I'll just say it all. So my husband and I started a business in 2018. We made the very naive mistake of allowing our spiritual mentor and our business mentor to be the same person. And at this point, Lex had only been saved for like a year and a half. He was craving more from just a deeper relationship with Jesus and a deeper knowledge. He didn't know much theology, or just like he didn't really get it all. And no one can, let's just say that. But we were led in business and in faith by the same family. And it got really messy after a couple of years, where you start idolizing your business and thinking that that's the only way that you're going to really gain your spiritual mentor's time. Then you don't really understand your relationship with Christ. Mind it, I already had a relationship with Jesus and very quickly caught onto this and was like, ooh, I'm not loving this. But also we were getting fed meat and potatoes for the first time spiritually. I will say that they spiritually were wise, incredible, offered so much deliverance. But when you have your spiritual mentor the same person as your business mentor, it gets messy. When you get money involved, when you get commitments involved, and commitments as in like, oh, I'm going to do this much this month for you, and I'm going to like, all of it just gets messy. You feel hurt if you don't get their time. It just is so messy. And so go ahead.
So would you describe it like this? Because I was with you through it all. Mm-hmm. But when you describe it like this, I'm not going to lie, it kind of sounds a little bit like
a cult. I'll just move on. People, they're good humans. Good humans. The result feels very similar, I will be honest. And it's not to say that it actually is a cult. I'm not going to say that. But result of what it can do to someone, the enemy knew exactly where to attack for us, and knew my husband was in a very vulnerable spot, and essentially used a lot of ego, pride, arrogance, and just created an idol out of this business. Where I remember sitting next to Lex in church every Sunday, and I knew he was praying, asking God, have our business prosper. God, please, our business will prosper. God, I give you our business. And I'm like, no, he wants your life. He wants your heart, and this business has your heart, and you're wanting to like trade or like cash in like an ATM machine with God. And that's not how it works. He wants your heart. And I will say, we learned so much in this business about human nature, about communication, about, I mean, like, shoot, they were the ones that were telling us, like, do not get a divorce every single time something awful would come up. So getting to kind of the hard stuff is with our business, it was 100% commission. And so we'd have a month where we'd make $25,000. And then my husband and I's blueprint is spend when you're emotional, spend pridefully. Our blueprint just said spend, 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 spend. And we never saved. I never knew what bills had been paid or hadn't been paid. I knew nothing. I didn't even know the account logins. I thought ignorance is bliss. I want to know nothing. And we're making enough money so it doesn't affect me. Because in my brain, I'm like, if you make enough money, then who cares? Like none of it matters. But then in our business, there's also chargebacks. There was months where somebody that's working with you, because we were brokers, so there were agents, if they got a chargeback, it would affect us. There was just months where things weren't great. And you would make negative $7,000 after making $25,000 the month before, but then you'd have to make that up and pay it back. And it was just messy and it was hard. And so my husband would have a hard month in business, not tell me. And I was naive and just was like, swipe, swipe, swipe. I'm living my best life, like doing whatever. And it led us to really bad spots. And so my husband wouldn't tell me, hey, our rent hasn't been paid in 3 months. And the worst of it was, I think I was on my way to Katrina's house and I call her weeping because we just found out that we had been evicted. And I was like, how? Like, I just didn't get it. And not only had we been evicted, but like he wasn't honest and like didn't even go to a court date to say like, hey judge, let's figure this out. His family doesn't go to a courthouse. So just the blueprint of who my husband was. Now he's like, I should have bucked up, walked in there and been like, please just help me. Like, I will figure it out. I will get a job. Like, but he was so obsessed with this business that he would not let it go. And for years.
But even in this situation, it just like, even one of the premarital questions you mentioned was like, his idea was to keep like, don't tell you anything, right? Because he was taught that the man should handle it all, that the woman doesn't need to know anything. And so his intention was to try to figure it out, to handle it.
And that was always what you said. You were like, I know he was just trying to fix it. Thank God for Katrina.
And at least, I mean, of course, in a marriage and where you were coming from was like, no, like these are, like when you're getting to eviction status, like those are the things you need to know.
Yeah, that we got to talk about. Because I could also have helped. Like, I think that there's a wisdom that I could have brought to the situation, but it's okay.
Yeah, and obviously we've worked through this.
This was years and years ago. So like, it wasn't like it happened last year. But that was,
since you're opening up about it, that was the first thing I thought of when you talked about those premarital questions and how he answered that way back then. I was like, to me, it was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's aha moment for you, and you're like, oh.
Yes. I'm sure you guys have had all the aha moments.
Yes. So we went through, it was after that happened, he still wasn't giving up his business. And now I think I know God brought us to the business for sure. I know he brought us to Dallas for sure for our business. Like, God is so intentional in his timing of everything. But essentially my husband, the only thing that finally made him put the business down was getting kicked out. Literally. He got told you have to leave because he was dishonest about a couple of things. And he'll be the first to say this. This is not me speaking ill of my husband. It's quite literally his testimony of faith, and where he really finally truly met the Lord. But essentially he was told, hey, I need you to take 90 days. And he didn't tell me. And so I find out essentially on my own. He had been doing the whole, I'm going to go to the office. We have Life 360, so we couldn't lie. So we would go to the office and sit outside the office. And he would go to meetings and sit outside of the meeting. And he was terrified to tell me the truth. The enemy was just lying to him. And there was an element of it where I think he truthfully, at that point, I felt like I was on my last straw. I really did. I remember calling Katrina and she was like, well, shoot, the last straw was the last straw. Like, what do we do?
This was the first time I got nervous because every time before that, I was like, we're going to figure this out.
You always said, we're going to figure it out.
And this one, I took the biggest back seat I could. Of course, front seat for the friend.
Yeah.
But back seat for the marriage of I have nothing to like contribute. I support you.
Yeah.
I don't know, because the conversations we've had as friends were so like, this can't happen again and all these things.
Yeah.
So the last go, that's why I was saying previously, like you literally gave this one to God.
Yeah.
And I definitely did my best to help with that. But I was like, oh my gosh, like this one is.
That was the first one you were like really angry. That was the first time you said something angry. And I was like, oh. And I will say, another biggest piece of advice I have for anybody is if you have friends that don't have your husband's back, you don't have friends. And Katrina has had my husband's back, and not like ignorantly, but she's marriage. She's our marriage. She's pro marriage. And like, we're going to get through this as a family. And as your best friend, we're not giving up until the cow, like I knew Katrina, if I went to her, was always going to support marriage. And that was
because I know that's what you want.
Yes.
It's like, I'm the friend that's like, if this is what you want, then I'm going to figure out how to get you what you want. Yeah. And even if it's hard, we're going to figure it out. And I think this last time was one of those moments where I was like, before I knew what you wanted. Mm-hmm. This last time I was like, shoot, the last conversation we had was like, this can't happen again. So here we are. I don't know what you want. And I don't want to speak prematurely either way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be pro.
But like, you weren't screaming, go get a divorce either, which is where it was so, I was scared to tell anybody. I was terrified. I was so scared to tell anybody what was going on because I know how bad it looked. And it was bad. Like my husband, I found out by calling our spiritual mentor and saying, what is going on? And he told me everything. And I was in shambles. So much so like I couldn't eat. It was horrible. And because it was also like, man, I've sacrificed our entire marriage for this business. And for now you to have screwed up and you're not allowed in the office. And now he didn't hurt anybody. Like it was not, honestly, him not being allowed in the office, that's a whole other story. Like, and it was along the same lines of like struggling to be honest in hard situations. But I firmly believe that God was like, I need to remove him. And it's the quote that it's like, hold everything loosely so I don't have to pry it from your hands. And the Lord had to pry this business from my husband's hands. And when he did, it was the best thing that ever happened because I looked at my husband and I said, I can't do this. I don't want a divorce. I may have said it. I did say it. I'm not going to lie on this podcast. I'm going to be real. I told him I didn't want to do it anymore. And then I can't even remember what the moment was, but the Holy Spirit was like, shut up, essentially. Like, you shut up. I was like, okay, I don't want to be around you because I'm hurt. Because I've sacrificed so much for this business and now you're not even doing it and you've lied to me for at least a month. And I was struggling. Like I was really struggling with it. And the Holy Spirit told me to stick through it. He didn't sleep in my bed for a long time. Well, not a long time. It was a little while. But my husband had to finally hit his knees. And I remember him saying, I'm giving my life back to Jesus. And I'm finally in a spot where I'm ready. And I didn't believe him. I was like, you're a fraud. You're not, no, because you've said this to me before. Every other time that you were lying to me about rent, every other time that you lied to me about our daughter's tuition, every other time that you lied to me about a car payment, or just like there were a million little lies that ended up being just like big cuts over the years. And there was also pretty big lies in the little lies too, but I didn't believe him when he said he was going to finally give his life to Jesus. And then he said, I'll prove it to you. And I was like, don't prove it to me. Like, do you? I was not kind. I didn't, I guess I can't say I wasn't kind. I was like, I'm going to work on me because I'm heartbroken now. You do you. We still lived in the same roof. We obviously parented together very well. I never let my kids really know what was going on, but we were very distant in the house, and it took probably 2 months of him just every single day fighting with Jesus. Got friends that were in the church that were accountability partners. Reached out to every man he could for mentorship. And literally, I'm not kidding you, 3 months later, I was like, who is this man? And it's the man I had been hoping for, but I was shocked when I actually saw him. Do you know what I mean? I don't even know how to explain it, but like, I was like, wait, this isn't fake. And it like makes me even emotional to think about it now, because I for sure, I never thought it was possible. Like, you hope, but then when it happened, I was like, and I now get defensive of the people that used to know him, like know the old Alexis. I get defensive for him because I'm like, you don't know him. Like, you don't know the Alexis I know now. Like, and that's kind of some of like, even I talk about the Saul to Paul transformation. Like, my husband had a radical encounter with God, and God revealed so much about him and fixed so much in him. And he obviously went to therapy too. And I'm like, I like, it's 100% God that fixed it all. And now we're not perfect now. We still have our communication issues. We argued about the fact that he's never cleaned a toilet earlier today. But I was like, I was able to come to him, and he literally said to me, this is insane. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm responding in flesh and anger. Can you give me a few minutes? Because I just need to pray about this. And I was like, who are you? It was just a toilet I was talking about. I'm like, I just need you to clean the toilet, okay? But he's just a different
that
human.
makes me so happy. Like, not that I didn't know any of this, but also just hearing it full circle. Yeah. You know, because you will give me updates, but it's not like we sit down and you start from the beginning. Yeah. You know, like, I know what happened, but to hear it in like a testimony style.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I honestly, because there's even now, Lex has like a group chat with 5 guys and their accountability. And like, one of the guys is struggling in an area, and they are like on each other. Like, no, dude, I'm in it with you. You're not going to lie to us. We're here with you. And it's just, he got that in our church. Our church, I remember, sorry, I'm not going to cry. Jesus, help me. We went up to the altar on the first day for a prayer. Like, it was like the first weekend we found out, because I wasn't going to not go to church. Like, I was like, if anywhere we're needed, we need to be at church. And we were together, and we didn't touch each other, didn't hold hands. And we went up for prayer, and I said, this is what's going on. And she prayed her freaking heart out. And then about 2 months later, because I started really studying love, and the part in scripture in 1 Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind, it does not boast, it does not envy, it keeps no record of wrong. So I started studying on my end forgiveness and love. And I was like, I can't have ever actually loved him if I am going back in time and saying, you lied to me this time, you lied to me this time, you lied to me this time, we lost this car, we were kicked out of this house, we had to switch our kids' schools this time. I couldn't have actually loved him. Or if I loved him, I didn't know what love actually was and didn't know how to show it when it was inconvenient. And I think love is an act and a choice and is an intentional action. And I didn't know how to show it when I was angry. And so there was a part on me that I was like, oh God, like I should be reacting like this is the first time this has ever happened. But instead I'm reacting like this is the 100th, because it is. And that means that I haven't forgiven him every single other time. And so I had to work on me and live like actually in hope, and just like saying, God, this is the time. It's it. You're going to do it. And in church, about 2 months later, that lady walks up to me and pulls me aside before service. And she asks me, what happened? And I was like, what? And she's like, you were having marriage troubles and you were going to get a divorce. And I was like, I didn't tell you I was going to get a divorce. Holy Spirit told you that. I was like, and this is so silly. I had just gotten my hair done. So my hair was super blonde. And she's like, you just look so light. And I was like, well, I just got my hair done. And she goes, no, honey, it looks great, but you look like a different person. You look so joyful and like nothing ever happened. Like there is a weight off of you, like you have lost 100 pounds and you are radiating it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was physically manifesting what I had been working on in myself. And I started crying because of course I do. I always cry. And I was like, I've been studying hope and forgiveness and love. And she just starts crying too. And I was like, thank you so much for confirming like that you can see what we're working on. And like, obviously at that point, my husband and I feel like we're on cloud 9, like we're the best we've ever done. But the timeline doesn't make sense to anybody else. It was only 90 days. And people are like, you should still hate him at this point. Like any like earthly, fleshly person, or honestly, like normal person would be like, there's no way you get transformed that fast. But it was like, no, it was that fast that everything shifted in our lives. Everything. Like everything changed.
And that's what, I mean, when you change everything changes, right? Like you guys hit that rock bottom.
It was absolute rock bottom.
And was that jolt of like everything, take inventory, see what needs to go, see what needs to stay, see what we need to get. Mm-hmm. You know, he started doing things, seeking his own help, you know, and giving, of course, to the Lord as well. Yeah. But like both of you, and you even saying like you had to start taking records of yourself. Like, wait a second, where am I complicit in this, or not even complicit?
I was not innocent.
Where can I take accountability?
Extreme ownership is what I was going for. I was like, where did I play a role here?
Ownership. Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. It is two people. And of course, in situations, can there be someone's fault or a wrong? Yes. But at the end of the day, if you're in a partnership that you want to make work, then you are going to figure out also on your end how to make it work. Yeah. Like, you know, I just don't think it's fair in a partnership to ever put one thing on one person, even if it was their fault. Yeah. Like, you know, it's like, no, we're in this together. We made these vows. We said these things like, and made these promises that we are going to get through this. So let me figure out how I'm going to get through this. And it's just,
I think that part of it was I didn't let myself play the victim for long. Like I did not allow myself to sit in it and woe is me. Because at that point it was like, buckle up, buttercup. This is the work. I didn't let myself sit in the victimhood of it. I was like, nope, that's just not it. That's not what we're doing here. But I just think that in that God was just so present. God, go ahead.
And that forgiveness piece, I mean, like you said, because it's regardless of what you're going to do or again, whose fault it is, right? Like he made the choice to start making changes and doing things and making the effort to change from the moment it all blew up. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just like commending you for making the choice to be like, wait a second, I've been holding on to some things, because how do you move forward if you don't forgive the person? Yeah. And I think that's such a big question, because, you know, it's like, how do you forgive somebody?
Yeah.
When they've wronged you.
So this is where I'm so stern and so big on this. Like, forgiveness isn't a feeling. And I said this on an Instagram reel the other day. Forgiveness isn't a feeling. Forgiveness is a choice. And because that's the case, we don't get to choose when we forgive somebody. It's not an option. Like, you want to be Christ-like, you don't get to not forgive somebody. We are called to forgive people. That is what Christ did. We are supposed to be Christ-like. He died to forgive us for much worse. When I choose anger instead of patience, I'm willfully sinning and I'm willfully disrespecting God. And how many times does he forgive me over and over and over and over and over again? And we're called to be Christ-like. So how on earth could I preach the word of God to people and share the good news of God without walking the walk of forgiveness? That's why I think, like, for me, divorce isn't an option. And honestly, that's one of those things that makes me righteously angry. When someone just says, oh, we grew apart. And there are people on these platforms that have hundreds of thousands of followers and they will choose divorce. And God forgives us. So how can we not forgive others? And so I just felt so convicted where I was like, God, I hear you. Like, marriage is biblical. And from the first day, it's been biblical, and he defined it for eternity. You are to be married forever on earth. So I knew, I was like, I'm not going to disrespect you and play with that, God. And that means I have to forgive, because I'm not going to live the rest of my life angry.
Well, I admire that. And although I agree as well, I just think it's still admirable to do, because it is definitely one of those concepts that's easier said than done. Yeah. Like, of course you want to forgive. Of course. Because also forgiveness is so, like, the lady complimenting you saying you look so light, like, it gives yourself your peace back.
For sure.
Because when you hold on to anger, hate, unforgiveness, it is a weight that you don't even realize you have on your chest, on your shoulders. Yep. Maybe you're wearing it on your face.
Yeah.
You know, it's these things. And then when you do learn how to, and it is a process.
It's not overnight.
A choice. But it's also a choice made again and again and again until that heart is healed.
Yeah.
And, you know, and your mind too, that it's like, no, this is a choice I've made and I'm going to continue to make it again, even if the enemy's trying to trick me or bring it up again. It's like, no, I already talked to God. I forgave this.
Yeah.
And
no, and I do say that.
The truth.
Exactly.
I'm sticking.
Yep. And it's funny, when you, like, I didn't realize how often I was dishonoring my husband. I wouldn't respect him because I thought, you don't deserve my respect. Financially, you're not actually supporting our family. Our lights got shut off last week. Like, you can't provide. Like, when I would get triggered, I was mean. Of course, if I am evil, like, I was not kind when he would do something reckless, which like a lot of people would be like, well, justifiably so. You got your lights shut off. So he's a coward and he's a child and he's a boy and he's not a grown man and he's not a provider and he's this and he's that. I would buy into all the worldly beliefs of a man being a dog. And I would kick him like a dog and I would dishonor him over and over and again. And then of course, the next time that something happened, why on earth would he want to come to me in honesty? So there was just this like cycle that we got stuck in where it just was this crazy cycle that literally is in the book Love and Respect of like, he's looking for respect and I'm looking for love and protection. And we would just go in this cycle of toxicity. It is biblical. You have to honor and respect your husband. You don't get to choose that. And that one's like, I will stand 10 toes down on that. And I wouldn't for a long time. So then it just is this like cycle. And like, you can't honor someone that you're holding resentment for. I can't honor him if in the back of my head, I'm thinking about all the times that he's hurt my family or that he's lied to me. So forgiveness was the only option.
Mm-hmm. I just, again, proud of you for sharing because I didn't know we were going to go that deep.
Neither did I.
I know.
I'm like,
was
episode 3, welcome.
Buckle up.
And this is actually not the worst of it. Marriage, yes. Life, no.
Yeah, true. Let's clarify that.
Marriage, this is the worst of it. And I'm grateful. I mean, God, that's one thing God has really shown is how faithful he's been through it.
No, it's so true. Because, I mean, of course, you just gave a big forgiveness, you know, but there's also goes day to day. Like, you know, how often do you notice something or like, you know, even sometimes I'll notice something that bugs me and then I'll just keep my mouth shut and swallow it and be like, okay. And then something else happens and then you're like, okay, it's fine. just keep the peace. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And then all of a sudden that 15th thing happens and you kept your mouth shut the whole time and you thought you were letting it go when really you were just keeping it right here ready to blow. And that to me is like even the day-to-day of keeping no record of wrong, because it's like, no, you have to forgive and let go and move on and not keep that record, because you will get upset. Like that is the recipe for bitterness and resentment.
It's funny you say that, because that's the toilet today. Literally, I caught myself, because I forgave the big. Doesn't mean I always throughout the day I'm like, oh, I forgive you. No, I'm still human and I am a wife with kids and a man that apparently he doesn't clean toilets. And I've seen that how many times. And today I let him know about 7 things back to back. But it all started with the toilet. And then I realized as you were just talking, I was like, oh my gosh, love keeps no record of wrong. Here I am frustrated, because I also told him, you've never cleaned off a countertop. You see the laundry on the floor and aren't just picking it up. Why aren't you helping me on these things? And I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, if you're listening to this, which you are, because you're probably helping me edit, I love you and I'm sorry.
You're the best.
Great job, honey.
Did he clean the toilet?
No, I did.
Oh.
No, but he
next
he
time
went to this. We did things to help solve the problem.
You know, this is just hitting both of our little nuggets here, is because like the forgiveness piece is so important. But then it also just reminds me of communicating expectations.
Girl.
And that's something I have to remind myself of, because how often do we expect our partner to do something because it makes so much sense inside of our head?
Why didn't you just see it?
Why wouldn't you do that? Yet I'm getting annoyed or frustrated at something that I never even communicated.
Yep.
I never said, hey, I was hoping you would do X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Or oh, even better, could we ever just ask them?
He literally just said that today.
Could you please
clean the toilet?
Clean the toilets?
But it's so rational. I'm like, why didn't I? It's so stupid, because I literally, in our final, we talked about it and we're fine. And because I was like, I am not about to get on this podcast a hypocrite, mad at my husband. So I said, okay, I'm realizing I had expectations. And my brother gave me the best advice in it's not marriage, this is life. Best advice. He said, your expectations are no one else's business. If they didn't agree to them, that's your problem. And I was like, interesting. That's a thought. And so I walked out into the kitchen and was like, all right, I had expectations. I clearly didn't communicate them well or at all until I yelled. And that was not productive. And he's like, yeah, like, why couldn't you have just asked? Like, I would have done it. And I was like, I know, but I don't want to have to ask. And he's like, yeah, but I don't see stuff like you see it. Like, I literally just don't see it. And I was like, but I don't know how you don't. And he's like, again, your expectations, not my business. I was like, fair, sorry. But also, I wish he could see. Never mind. We're just going to keep that thought to ourselves.
Of course. I mean, don't we want people to read our minds and see the need and just make the world go round?
Yeah.
Our world?
I wish. That's not how it works.
But that's how we all operate too. I mean, and I'm sure if there are moments where roles are reversed, like I can't name them because it's not.
Because I'm perfect.
My reality, but yeah, I mean, not in this house, but I'm just kidding. Totally kidding.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
All right. And on that note, we are going to do our Bible verse today, which you should all know because it is at every wedding you've ever been to. No, I'm just kidding.
You know.
But today we gave it different meaning. Okay?
Well, so I thought I knew it. Let's just say that. I thought I knew it. I actually knew it by heart and could give you the whole spiel. Like I could say it quickly. But I never actually listened or applied it. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So this is 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy, is not boastful, is not arrogant, is not rude, is not self-seeking, is not irritable, and does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
Amen.
Amen. And that's all marriage.
Favorite verse, studied it, love it, live by it. If that's one that also just like, if you get that into your soul, you start to realize like, I am also supposed to love everybody. So this is not just for husbands, but this is for everybody, because scripture also says above all things, love everybody. Because love is the greatest commandment of them all. So do you want to pray us out, or do you want me to pray us out?
You can take the prayer today.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for just being a good father. Thank you for our husbands. Thank you for designing marriage perfect, and just that you designed us to endure and learn, and just giving us the covenant of marriage, God. Thank you for my testimony with Alexis. Thank you for giving us the strength to get through hard seasons and to do hard things, God. Thank you for friendships that can support me and that stood beside me in the heart of our marriage, God. And Lord, I just pray for anybody that is watching, God, or listening, wherever they're at, Lord. I pray that if their marriage is in a hard times or good times, they can just take and hear whatever you want them to hear in our podcast, Lord. We just thank you for the time together, and thank you for sending your son to live the perfect life for us and to be the perfect example of a perfect man, Lord, for our husbands. Just thank you for being you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today on marriage. Next week, we don't know what we're talking about yet.
We sure don't.
Make sure you come and find out with us.
Yes.
Like, subscribe, follow, all the things.
Share.
We are on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. So if you're listening to this, come watch us. If you're watching us, go listen. Share it with your friends, especially if you found something useful or something that spoke to you in this.
We will see y'all next week. Love you. Bye.
Bye.